Good evening. There's a new COVID alert for Queensland tonight after a New South Wales truck driver was infectious with the disease while in our state.
Let's go straight to Adam Hegarty at Archerfield. Adam, how long was he in the community?
Well, Melissa, only about a day, but the concern this evening is health authorities tell us that this truck driver visited a couple of truck stops here in Queensland while infectious. So we'll bring the important list up on the screen for you now of these exposure venues. The BP here at Archerfield, where we are, also a BP truck stop out at Gundawindi on August 26th. The message tonight, very clear, very adamant. If anyone was at those locations at those times, they need to isolate at home immediately and get a COVID-19 test. Melissa, health authorities will be hoping this is an essential worker that follow the rules to a T. For instance, wearing a mask, limiting the connection or contact with anyone else at these service stations at those times. If that's the case, hopefully the risk is low.
Adam, thank you so much. The Premier has bowed to public fury over sports teams and their families being allowed to enter the state and says some Queensland families will now be allowed to return. 50 spots will open up this weekend, but critics say it's not enough.
I feel like I've been punished because my son died. My son passed away and now I'm being punished.
Darren Harris is facing financial and emotional devastation. The Eagleby dad travelled to the New South Wales North Coast when his 21-year-old son Tyron passed away. Now he's stuck there and says he'll need to sell his car.
I've had to pay for a funeral and all the rest of it, and it's just, and you know, they're not cheap, and it's just, I'm losing, I'm falling apart.
Darren will be one of hundreds of Queenslanders hoping to get a spot back in hotel quarantine after the Premier announced an easing of the border ban starting this weekend.
Numbers in our quarantine hotels have only slightly eased, so we can offer places to 50 families as a start, but we will add more places as rooms become available.
I'm abiding by all the rules. I got vaccinated. I did everything I'm supposed to, and it's still not. They still don't class what happened to me as a reasonable thing. Let us come home. Let us come back to our state. It's like you don't want us.
The Deputy Premier says he understands Queenslanders' anger over sporting team arrivals.
I understand the frustration of the public. I understand the optics of it. However, they had a COVID-safe plan, a mechanism through which they could bring people back. It didn't add to the load of hotel quarantine.
We need to find a way to get more of these Queenslanders home, and what the Premier announced today was 1% of the available beds.
The new hotel spots are too late for some. Stephen Tremaine went to New South Wales for his mother Myrna's funeral. He was approved to come back on the day the borders closed, but missed the deadline by 3 hours.
It was a very traumatic, time to be returning from the funeral, having to say goodbye to my dad, and then, being faced with this when I arrived.
Stephen went into hotel quarantine, but was ordered by police to return to New South Wales. When he refused, officers fined him $5,500.
When they were off the record, like not reporting conversations, they were apologetic. They didn't really want to do it, but they'd been given directions to do it.
How many Queenslanders has the Premier deported and fined on the way out?
I'm not aware of those circumstances. If you forward them to the Health Minister will follow them up with the exemptions unit.
Stephen has been allowed to stay in hotel quarantine and says he'll fight the fine in court. Now, for those lucky enough to get an exemption, the battle isn't over. Take cancer sufferer Sharon Gordon, for example. She's isolating at Chinderah, less than 5 kilometres away from Queensland, and has had 11 negative COVID tests. Today, she was finally given an exemption, but told she can't drive over the border and instead has to fly in. Her options now are driving the 800 k's to COVID hotspot Sydney, leaving her car there and getting a flight back. Or leave her car at the border, hire a private car to Ballina, fly to Sydney, stay at a hotel overnight and then fly back. No matter what, the costs are adding up, and Sharon's not the only one facing the problem. And you can understand why they're so angry when the goalposts keep being moved.
It's clear interstate travel won't be getting back to normal anytime soon. The Premier's digging in, issuing a chilling warning about the safety of Queensland children if she opens the border.
It's a politics of the pandemic and a Premier defending her tough border stance, staring down calls to reopen early.
I will stand up for this state every single day. I don't want to have to be standing up telling families that they've lost their loved ones.
Another indication she's not convinced we can and should follow the national plan and live with the virus at 70 or 80% vaccination rates.
Is the Premier now saying that lockdowns and restrictions won't end until 100% of Queenslanders are fully vaccinated?
You open up this state and you let the virus in here, and every child under 12 is vulnerable. They are the unvaccinated.
It's a new line in her argument, calling for more advice.
What's going to happen to the children, Mr. Speaker? It is a fundamental question. It is omitted from any modelling.
The Premier's new line was seen as a diversion and a scare tactic, with the nation's chief medical officer having already said nowhere in the world is there a vaccination program for under 12s, and childhood infections are already included in the modelling. New South Wales Hope Life returns to normal at 70% next month.
And every state in Australia, sooner or later, is going to have to live with Delta.
Treasurer Cameron Dick doesn't see it that way.
Our government will not run up the white flag. Queenslanders are not hiding under the doona. Queenslanders are not living in caves. My message to Scott Morrison and the LNP: stop conspiring with Clive Palmer and stop tolerating cranks like George Christensen and Matt Canavan, Queenslanders who would let the virus in and let the virus rip.
Lane Calcutt, 9 News.